All right, kicking off the updated Dynasty quarterback rankings at the very top is Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jayden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts making up tier 1. Allen remains the Dynasty QB1 even with a rockier season than we're used to, but hey, he's still a top 5 fantasy QB, and the 30-plus point ceiling is still very much there. And now with Amari Cooper being added and integrated into the offense more and more every week, that should bump Allen's floor up while also still elevating the ceiling. Lamar is basically in the same boat. He's been amazing this year and has been for quite some time, so he's also the Dynasty QB2. Not really much more we need to say there. Then, of course, Jayden Daniels is the new hotness right now, but deserves this top 3 ranking in every way because he's just been so good so early on in his career. He has the rushing upside that we all covet. He's a very good passer as well too. And imagine if they add a receiver next year in free agency or the draft to pair with Terry McLaurin. He is essentially the younger version of Jalen Hurts here at QB4, who, has lost some shine from his breakout 22-2 season, but he's still a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. He's still very mobile, still a good passer who gets to throw to A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Saquon Barkley, which is always nice. And the tush push is as effective as ever still, even without Jason Kelce, especially at the goal line. This is easily the top 4 Dynasty quarterbacks in tier 1 right now. Now, tier 2 is a group of 6 players who honestly confuse the ever-loving crap out of me. I have no clear bearing on how this group should be ordered, but at least for right now, the way that I have it goes Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Kyler Murray. Love is the only one that I'm even confident in 100% on his ranking. He should be a top 5 Dynasty quarterback, and he belongs at the top of this tier. He's young, he's producing very well right now, he has the weapons around him that are all very young as well, and the offensive system is brilliant for him to be a borderline top 5 guy annually. But after him, I don't really know how to group the next 5 guys. I bet if you asked 100 random people on Twitter, on Reddit, the DLF Discord to rank these 5 players, you'd get about 100 different answers. Stroud had a strong rookie year last year, but has looked rather pedestrian this season, especially without his top weapons. But he's still super young, and when his weapons are healthy, are some of the best in the league. Caleb is basically the same way. We just don't have a full year's worth of games to go off of like we do with CJ Stroud, but he's one of the best prospects of all time. He's produced well over the past month or so, and he has the weapons around him to support him, so he's still up here inside this top 6. Patrick Mahomes is, well, Patrick Mahomes, but if we removed his name from the equation, I think he would be ranked a lot lower given his production since basically they traded away Tyreek Hill. Plus, Kelce is on the verge of retirement. Rashee Rice is rehabbing from a torn ACL. Again, it is still Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day, the best quarterback in the NFL. But for Dynasty, how much does that really matter? Then we get to Joe Burrow, who is just kind of more of the same, a bunch of upside for fantasy given his age, his pedigree, his past production, the weapons that he currently has to throw to, but then he's also fought through injuries. He never really starts a season well. T. Higgins is most likely gone at the end of the year, so he's also not really immune to a roller coaster type of production, but he still has to be up here because it's Joe Burrow. And then there's Kyler Murray, who is also scoring as a top 10 fantasy quarterback right now, ahead of Patrick Mahomes and CJ Stroud. He has the weapons, he has the rushing ability. He's still just 27 years old like Joe Burrow, but the offensive system or scheme just is not working, so everything is just very inconsistent, but that just feels like the name of the game for this entire tier. Young talent with strong weapons and massive upside, which keeps them above tier 3, but inconsistencies that prevent them from either putting everything together into one elite season and entering tier 1. Getting into tier 3, though, we have 5 players that I think collectively can just be called production. It's really where the line starts to be drawn between asking if you're okay with them as QB1s, but you really would love these guys if they are your QB2. Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, Justin Herbert, and Jared Goff. All of these guys have a very solid floor. Their averages are probably around the QB 10 to 15-ish kind of range, but they all can have spike weeks because of the offenses and the weapons that they have to throw to. Really, the only one that kind of doesn't fit that mold right now is Justin Herbert, but that's a situational issue because the Chargers just want to run the ball, and even still, this year we've seen spike weeks in the mid-20s in fantasy points, and they've been throwing more since the bye week. It's just, can we get Justin Herbert to a point where he's a higher floor option, either with more volume, better weapons, or ideally both? But I don't think that we can have him any lower than that just out of pure talent alone, which we've seen for multiple years before this season. Tier 4 now is another grouping of 4 players that I'm going to call Young Hope. Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, and Sam Darnold. All of these guys are 27 years old or younger. 2 of them are actually rookies, and they all have shown flashes of potential but are hindered in some way that they need to either grow out of or develop out of in order to continue getting better and rise up the Dynasty rankings. Drake May, of course, has the pedigree and all of the talent in the world. He's just in a really bad offense right now, but he's been highly capable with bad weapons already. We just need to get him better weapons and ultimately really more playing time in the NFL. Bo Nix is kind of the same thing, definitely not as talented as Drake May, but he's producing for fantasy despite a bad situation around him. Again, imagine if he gets more weapons to throw to than just Courtland Sutton. Trevor Lawrence is right in between the two rookies, mainly because I believe that's how the talent is ordered, from Drake May to Trevor Lawrence to Bo Nix. Lawrence still carries upside, but it's getting down to the wire here in terms of us waiting to see if he puts it all together or if he's just basically like Derek Carr 2.0. And then Sam Darnold is the rising name into this tier from where he was before the season started. I definitely think that he is the least talented of the four players in this tier and the most aided by his situation, but hey, I mean, he's doing well in that situation and we really can't knock him for it. The only question is, does he re-sign in Minnesota for next year, or does he price himself out of the Minnesota Vikings and into a worse situation where that lower tiered talent brings him back down to earth? But for now, at least, I've seen enough that if he stays in Minnesota, he could just be a younger version of Geno Smith or a younger version of Baker Mayfield, since he's still only 27 years old with a potential multi-year deal to stay with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, and perhaps most importantly, Kevin O'Connell. But speaking of Geno Smith, he tops the next tier made up of just him and Tua Tagovailoa. There's really nothing special here, just two guys who are productive enough now, but how much longer does that continue? Geno is 34 years old. He has one more year left on his deal with Seattle, so can he keep producing well enough to be a starter for another year or two? That remains to be seen. And then Tua, much younger than Geno Smith, but it's the concussions, man. That is some scary, scary stuff for Tua. I'd love it if someone told me that Tua played another 5 years, injury-free in a Mike McDaniel Dolphins offense, most of that time with Tyreek Hill before he retires, with Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane, and everything is just really, really great for Miami. But one more concussion, and Tua's a medical retired just like Andrew Luck, and poof, he's gone, and so is all of his dynasty value. Getting into tier 6 now, it's another very simple tier of 3 players, 2 of whom we haven't even seen actually start a game yet in the NFL. JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Anthony Richardson. Again, McCarthy and Penix, we haven't really even seen play. I mean, Penix had one throw a couple weeks ago, but that's all we've seen. Both guys are first-round talents in good situations. We're just waiting on them to get their names called, which could be in 2025 or could be in 2027. Who knows? Now, Anthony Richardson is the one that I'm sure everyone's most interested in. I included him in this tier because he still has tremendous upside. That is just the nature of the type of player that he is, that if he were to ever start games again for any team, not just Indianapolis, but anybody, his value could go back up. It's kind of like where we were with Justin Fields like 10 or 11 months ago. We didn't know if he'd start again, or if he did, where, and if he did, would he be better or the same if he got into a different situation? So he presents more upside than the players behind him just because of the type of quarterback that Anthony Richardson is for fantasy, but with so much unknown around him, it's really hard to put him any higher than this. And then lastly, in tier 7, it's just all of the old guys. Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers. These guys are cheap production for contenders that are trying to win now, but that's really about it because most of these guys won't even be in the league in like 2 or 3 years. And then in tier 8, just to round out the top 32-ish rankings would go Jameis Winston, Bryce Young, Will Levis, and Daniel Jones. All of these guys maybe the starters on their team right now, but maybe not the starters next year, let alone even next week or next month. So there we have it, an updated top 32-ish dynasty quarterback rankings now that we're a little over halfway through the 2024 season. Make sure to drop any and all questions in the comments down below. Call me an idiot if you want because of these rankings, but make sure that you're subscribed either way for more dynasty content for the rest of 2024 and into the 2025 offseason.